Alright, so this one's going to be a little different than usual. This is going to be a short and sweet video as I'm in the middle of moving, so what could be more short and sweet than a grand strategy game? Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking when picking this one to review, but Xbox graciously blessed me with a code to the premium edition, so I figured I'd take y'all along with me on this adventure into Aura History Untold. The first thing you'll notice is how important Oxide Games took their art style when booting this game up. The intro cutscene is very stylish, with this visual journey watching different ages all interact with each other. On the other side of this cutscene is where we start our matches, and I was in total disbelief by how many civilizations they're starting out with. As a new player to this game, I won't lie, I was a bit overwhelmed by the amount of choice I had, and not really in a good way. I wish there was a way for a new player to not accidentally pick someone too difficult to play with. Maybe a rating system that clearly says, this Civ is for new players or something. All the stats on the side of the screen mean absolutely nothing to a new player. So again, maybe for a first time boot up process, have a player be put into a screen and handed a few easy civs to choose from, with more clear expectations of how to use them, and a big ol' skip tutorial civilizations button for returning players to be handed the mountain of stats and mechanics these kinds of players crave. Back to talking about the art style, I like it. I like the cartoony looks of the characters, although you'll never really see them aside from a couple brief moments. I find it funny that all the different UI elements make musical tones as the mouse glides over them. Pair that with the music and a vibrant color palette, and it makes for a decent first impression. So let's get into the actual game, why don't we? The other first impression of actually being on a map and playing a game is not great at all. The frames were horrendous, my scrolling was very delay heavy, and anytime I clicked next turn, I ran the risk of my computer exploding in my lap. It actually took a surprisingly long time to tweak the settings to get up closer to 60 frames. So long, in fact, that I almost quit this review and hurt my standing with Xbox. However, it turns out the water is just completely graphically broken in this game. After turning basically anything related to the water off, even with everything else cranked up, I still got good frames. Oh, and turn VSync off too if you're running a third-party VSync like Intel's or GeForce's, because it creates some nasty flashing and flickering effects that I don't know if my recording software actually picked up or not. So I'm really torn so far on this game because it looks great and stylized when it's actually running well. But on the other side, I shouldn't have to play doctor with your game before I even start moving army men around. Personally, if it wasn't because I wanted to make a video, I could totally have seen myself refunding this game at this point. And I'm glad I didn't, because behind Stellaris and the Civilization franchise, this could end up being one of my favorite grand strategy games. So now we got the actual game running smoothly. So how is the gameplay and mechanics? I'm pleased to say this game does exactly what it set out to do. That is, provide a solid grand strategy game with some excellent replayability and an in-depth production gameplay loop. The first thing you'll do when starting out after hitting the like and subscribe buttons is to begin gathering resources, which you will feed into production buildings in order to create goods and amenities. You'll take these goods and turn them into more powerful buildings or improve the ones you have, and the amenities will be funneled back into the citizens in order to gain a myriad of bonuses depending on things like happiness and knowledge. Those bonuses will then be funneled back into your production chain to boost the cycle in a positive feedback loop of ever increasing bonuses and production amounts. This is the aspect of Aura History Untold that really separates it from the other grand strategy games that it's closely compared to. The choices are endless when deciding exactly what to start producing or building next, and a few good decisions early on in the game can dramatically snowball into total domination by the mid to late game. This is going to be a stretch, but I would say that this is more of a Factorio or Satisfactory type of gameplay loop packaged into a grand strategy game, and it's genuinely addicting. In my Russian game, as I crossed over onto the second act of the game, this whole cycle really clicked with me, and I entered this zoned out, eyes glazing over with drool coming out of my mouth mode, where all I started doing was optimizing all of my workshops and mines and butcher shops and yada yada, to the point where I'm sure there was a stretch of time where I didn't even look at the game map, only the toolbars and windows showing the production lines and inputs and outputs. Unfortunately, like a dunce, I didn't focus on military at all, and China got jealous of my booming economy that they decided to start a war of annihilation against me and totally wiped me out. I knew I liked this game when I realized the AI seemed smart enough to go after my greatest weakness with almost no warning, and also as I genuinely had a heartbreaking reaction watching all of my hard work get turned to flames and rubble. If I didn't like it, then I wouldn't have cared. So what is the purpose of the production lines besides just endlessly making and consuming stuff? How do you win? What's the end goal? As you play Aura History Untold, the game will monitor everything you do and assign it a points value that this game calls prestige. After a certain amount of civilizations have crossed a research threshold, the civilizations with the lowest prestige are kicked from the game. Repeat this a couple times, and at the end of it all, the player with the highest prestige wins. Easy peasy. This game kindly keeps track of your prestige in a toolbar and even tells you what is contributing to this point value to let you know what to double down on or if there's something else you could be doing better. My main issue with this system is that some things seem to contribute way more prestige than others. Like, there are buildings that cost extremely valuable turns and production to create that will give you like 25 prestige points, when all the civs are in the thousands, making some buildings feel useless. Yet at the same time, producing and consuming goods and amenities seems to be one of the easiest ways to gain prestige, so it seems easier to just keep your citizens happy by showering them with amenities than sacrificing the time it takes to pursue some of the goals or special buildings. And you could keep me happy by showering me with likes and subscribes. Aura History Untold isn't perfect. For example, the name is stupid. Get rid of the Aura part. Just name it Untold History or something. The Aura thing is giving me weird anime vibes. Cut it out. Another thing that is absolutely a problem that will completely turn some people off of this game is also a potential reason that someone would choose this game over any other grand strategy game. And that is the overwhelming amount of micromanagement required in the mid to late game. Seriously, that comment I made earlier of not even looking at the game map because I was too engrossed in the glorified spreadsheets was not a joke. If you have 8 cities and each one is producing many different goods and consuming many amenities, and you have a war going on, literally each turn will consist of you opening the city screen, analyzing every single input and output to make sure you're producing more than you're consuming, making sure buildings are upgrading, you haven't run out of amenities, making sure you're not overproducing anything, the enemy hasn't pillaged any zones, if the happiness meters are off, then you gotta tweak the amenities to make sure that they're optimal, claim any land you might need to claim, and then moving on to the next city to repeat it 7 more times, and then to do it again next turn. Keep in mind that the games last for hundreds of turns. This doesn't include building and managing reserves of troops, building and spreading your religion, handling the crowd of paragons you collect like little Pokemon, the whole beast that is the tech tree, and so on and so forth. Seriously, as I said earlier, this sounds like absolute heaven to some people and absolute hell to others. While this can be a slog and tedious, the developers have actually listened to their players, because at the time of writing this, they introduced some more tool screens to easily get an overview of your inputs and outputs, without having to go to every single city just to look at your production. Most of the developer blogs and patch notes put out an air of positivity and future thinking as they promise to keep adding features and even mod support for this game. With no egregious microtransaction store or anything, I could tell that these devs are passionate about this game. Another valid critique of this game, and one I hope it's not too late to fix or remedy, is the absolutely dreadful warfare in this game. The devs even say that this game isn't really a war game in one of the patch notes, and I agree with them, so it makes me wonder why they even bothered with it at all. It's very rock, paper, scissors, and cities are destroyed extremely swiftly, even with walls. Also, when combat is engaged, there's nothing you can do to retreat your troops unless I'm just not seeing the option. If I'm wrong, then let me know, but I had times where I had just produced a legion of crossbowmen for a small force of cavalry to just straight sprint for them. And when combat starts, there's nothing you could do about it except add more troops. Retreat is not an option, and not in the fun battle cry way, more in the "this sucks, I want to stop playing" way. Staying inside the combat, I'm just gonna say it. Mustering troops does not feel good or fun. I see why they did it, and I get it, but it's not fun. Basically, troops cost time and production to produce, time that you're taking away from other, more important goals. When a unit is produced, they are added to a reserve pool. Then, when you want to access those troops, you have to muster them. And from my playing, it seems you have to muster them in certain amounts, like 1, 3, 5, and so on. And the units you muster together seem to have to stick together. Mustering certain units in certain formations grants some bonuses too. So in order to have a decent army, you have to produce a ton of units at a time and wait till they're all ready to muster, then still continue to wait as they muster. In a game where cities can be destroyed in 2 or 3 turns, this whole system feels so frustrating, because once you're at war, you have no time to produce and muster units. All the production has to be done well in advance, meaning you have no idea what your enemy is going to throw at you, so you don't know what part of the rock, paper, scissors to build, and that's if they even go to war with you, leaving you with an army of wasted production sitting there rotting as technology trees lead them to being outclassed anyways. So to me, the worst part of Ara History Untold is the combat, and it is to be avoided at all cost. The best part of the game is easily the production chains and watching your first tiny town snowball into an economic powerhouse of an empire. I can totally see a sequel to this game where combat is abandoned and replaced with corporate espionage, as the economic leaders fight each other from the shadows by manipulating religion and politics to sabotage others to give themselves boons. Or if Oxide wants to stick with the traditional warfare, then honestly a lot of work needs to be done to tweak and balance it. A first good step would be to just get rid of the mustering system and make cities harder to destroy. As it stands, warfare has very little gain at a horrendous cost. Maybe there's a lesson in there somewhere. Aside from all that, the diplomacy leaves a lot to be desired, although it's relatively serviceable. I like the little tribes you find that you can assimilate into your civilization if they like you enough, and the constant stream of goodies your scout can find make the early game of History Untold pretty relaxing. It's once you start crossing over into that Act 2 is when things start getting complicated and micromanagement heavy. So, in conclusion with Ara History Untold, what we have here is a game that earns its 7 out of 10 ratings. I don't like giving games number ratings because I think it's stupid, but this game is absolutely good enough to play and sink tons of hours into. Yet, at the same time, seeing the glaring flaws of a subpar combat system, excessive micromanagement, and hardware-hungry graphics is something that should be criticized. On the flip side, the game is visually pleasing, and the sounds and music create an easily listenable game. And with the promise of long-term support and updates to targeted problems based on player feedback and mod support, this game absolutely has the ability to rise up against its competitors. Definitely gonna revisit this one when they release updates, and I won't lie, after finishing this video, I'll probably still squeeze a few more games out of it. Again, short and sweet video this time. I got a lot of moving going on. Probably by the time you're watching this, I'll be getting my streaming setup ready, so keep an eye out for that in the future. Got some big plans for this channel, and I'm grateful to every one of y'all that stopped by and made it this far into the video. And special shout out to those who hit that like and subscribe button. Ropeburn out.